Hello friends, good afternoon and welcome to EduSat Live Lectures. Dear friends, as you know that we have started a series on political geography and today we are conducting yet another lecture in the same series. In today's lecture, we will try to understand elements of state. In that, we will try to see the elements which are population, territory, government, sovereignty, recognition as well as shape of the state. Also, we will try to understand enclaves, exclaves, buffer zone and shutter belts related to the elements of states. To discuss this topic, we have with us our subject expert Dr. Intikhab Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed is an expert on political geography and he has been associated with University of Delhi in various teaching capacities. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Sir to our studios and request him to start the lecture. Welcome, Sir.
Thank you. Very good afternoon, dear students. As in the today's lecture, we are discussing about different elements of a state, that by which, what are the elements by which different state they are constituted. So there are certain elements that constitute a state like population, territory, government, sovereignty and its international recognition. And also in this first part we will discussing about different shapes of the state. And for understanding all these elements of a state, we should know that the state is a political organized territory that is administered by a sovereign government that is having a permanent population and that is recognized by an international community. So from the above definition, it is clear that these following are the elements of a state. These are categorized into two categories. Like population and territory, they are the physical basis or the material basis of the states. There are the next three elements like sovereignty, the government and its international recognition that also constitute its political and spiritual basis. So first of all, we should understand why this population is the most important element that constitutes an state. As we know that the state is a human institution and the population is the most primary element that constitutes an state. As a human organization, we need certain kind of people to form a state. Like different scholars, Plato and Aristotle, they were of the view that the population should neither be too large nor it should be very small for constituting an state. So according to Plato, he has given a certain number like 5040 for, and this is an ideal number that would constitute an state. Aristotle also has given the number and said that the state should not be the larger enough that make it should be larger enough that make it sufficient and it should be small enough that make a good government possible. And Aristotle also has given the minimum number as 10,000 and the maximum number as 1 lakh that constitute its base in terms of the population. And it must be remembered that Plato and Aristotle, they were of the view on the basis of the city-state concept, and this concept was based upon the state of like Athens and Sparta in that time. And in present time, the modern state, they vary in the population. In fact, in the modern times, like Rousseau, he has argued that and given the number that the number of the population or the number of the resident in a state that should be around 10,000. And in modern times, we can see different examples of a state, like some are very large state, some are very smaller state, like a smaller state like Monaco and San Mariano. These are the smaller state having around thousands of the population, but the larger state like China and India having crores of the population. And in fact, the modern tendency in present time we can see that it is argued that the larger state, they are more beneficial, they are because they provide the military defense and they are at the advantage stage. However, the larger population that may not be or that may be a liability on the resource of that particular state, and that could not, if that could not provide the adequate facilities for the state's maintenance. So one of the main problem that is faced by the developing countries is of its overpopulation or the population explosion. So there should be a happy balance, a optimum balance between the size of the population and the material wealth of the state. As we can't say if there is a desert region and if there is no population in that particular zone, we can't call it as a state. In modern time, the maximum and the minimum size of the population that has not been prescribed by any organization. In fact, the international law does not require any number for constituting a state. It means that there is no hard and fast rule for the number of the population that constitute an state. The other second important element of a state is its territory or the fixed geographical area on the earth's surface. If there will not be an fixed territory, that the state cannot be constituted. So the people need the territory to recognize and to live in that particular locations, because they want to be a socially active and politically active in that particular territory. But in modern times, the citizens, they are also bound together by different residence on a common territory. So this territory is made up of three things like land, the water, and the air space. This is comprise the territory of a state. In fact, in modern times, the size of the state vary. Some of the state, they are very large in the size. Like we can take the example of Russia, which is the largest country of the world and having around 17 million of the area, 17 million square kilometer of the area that constitute around 12.5% land area of the world. And the other larger countries are like Canada, China, United States, Brazil, Australia, and India. But there are some micro states as well, and they are very small in their size in the area. Like a smaller state like Monaco, which is having 1.95 square kilometers of the area, and the Vatican City, which is only having 0.44 kilometer square area. And maximum or the many of these smaller state or the micro state, they are small island nation, they are small island countries. So according to international law, all the states are equal in the eye of the status and right in the eye of the international law, no matter how unequal they are in terms of population or in terms of the size of that area. So it is claimed that the smaller state, they are good for the efficient administration, and that inculcate the smaller state inculcate the people a sense of unity and the love for the state. However, the truth is that the smaller state, they are at the disadvantage end, because if we compare from the larger state, they provide and they are influenced by the powerful state, and it is said in favor of the larger state that they are in the defense, they are strong in the defense, and because the availability of the resources, they are economically self-sufficient. And also it may be said that the power and the security of a state is not determined only by size of its territory. So some factors in this regard are also very important, like geographical location, its resource base, and the climate of that particular state. And the function of a state, like political and legal community of the human beings, they must first of all be exercised in a given territory. So the territory is a geographical area that is owned and controlled by a government or a country to exercise such state sovereignty. The third important element, which is the government, it is the integral part of a state. Like different people, they are occupying a different kind of territory, and if there is not a particular of government, if they are not politically organized, they does not form any state, as the government is the political organization of the state. It is the concrete and visible instrument of the state power. As Garner has pointed out that the government is the agency through which common policies are determined, by which common affairs are regulated, and the state's wills and acts are through the government must be regulated. So the state or the government must be effective in its administration, that maintains the order, enforce different kind of obedience. And without a government, if there will not be government in a state, there will be lawlessness in that particular region, and there will be anarchy, and ultimately the state may be dissolved. As the government is consist of three different organs, which is legislature, executive, and the judiciary, and these three organs, they work like legislature makes different kind of laws, the executive enforces those laws, and the judiciary execute or educate or dispute by those laws. So there are different kind of government in the world, like there is a democratic form of government, there's monarchy, and there is a dictatorship. Most of the developed states, they are democracies, and some of the developing nations, they are also democracies. As we can see this in the case of India, India is also a very large or the largest democracy in the world. And in the last, whatever may be said, it may be different kind of government, but one thing is clear, that there can be no state without the government. The fourth important element of a state formation is its sovereignty, and this sovereignty denotes that the state is a supreme and final legal authority above and beyond which no legal power exists. So the sovereignty have two different aspects. It should be internally sovereign and it should be externally sovereign. Here the internal sovereignty means that the state has supreme power over all its citizens and associations, and externally it should also be a sovereign nation, because it should be independent and free from any foreign nations. So the sovereignty is the characteristics which distinguishes the state from all other associations. As we can say that the India was also, before independence, India was not a state because it was ruled under the British, and it does not have the sovereignty. Similarly, the Indian Federation, different states of India, they also are called states, but they are not sovereign. So we can't call those states as a different state or different country. In fact, United Nations also cannot be called as a state because it is not a sovereign entity. And it should be noted, however, that the absolute sovereignty is a legal concept. In actual practice, there is no state that is able to exercise unlimited power either over its individuals or associations that forms terrestrial domain in its international relation. So if a state respects and avoids different international laws, treaties, and policies of different international organizations, United Nations, different agencies, and there will be international anarchy causing serious threat to international peace and security if there will not be a sovereignty. A number of writers who have also attacked the concept of absolute sovereignty on various grounds, and it said that it is not feasible or it is undesirable, as Lusky has rightly argued that unlimited sovereignty is a threat to world peace and humanity. The fifth element can be seen in terms of, like, in modern times, different states, in between the different states, the different relations are increasing, and different states are growing in different kind of activities. So the international organization and the different institutions, they have come up. So therefore, some of the scholars, they argue that the international recognition should be an integral part of the state elements. And here, the recognition of a sovereign status of a new state by other state is called its international recognition. According to important jurist or the famous jurist Oppenheim, he has said that regarding the international recognition, that a state is and becomes an international persona by recognition only and exclusively. But there's no agreement as how many states should recognize for that particular state to be that particular state in the eyes of the international laws. So the recognition is very, like, political, having very much political dimension, as we can see in the case of China. China was very much a state before the United Nations formations, and also it came under the communist rule in 1949, but it was not recognized by the United States because of the Cold War at that time. So the communist China also was not the state at that time, but it was not recognized by the United Nations different agencies. So after this, we can see that after seeing these 5 major elements of the state, the shape of the state is also very much important, because the shape, it is the form, the identity of any particular state that control different lengths and boundaries of different states. So the shape also can influence and determine different kind of easiness and the difficulties of international administration, and can affect social unity. So the shape can foster or the hinder effective organization of a state, and each of the state is having different advantages and disadvantages. So there are 5 major types of states and 2 other types of shape. Like compact state is having the circular, oval, or rectangular shape, and in this particular shape, the center of the particular geometric center of the state is equal from all the direction, all the boundary side of the state. The second stage is protracted state. It is more or less like compact state, but there is an elongation. There is a large extension of one particular region towards its to gain some kind of resources. Third type is elongated state. The elongated state, they are much longer than its width. It may be till 6 times. It is the most or the least efficient state, which is long and narrow in its shape. The fragmented state, which are composed of disconnected part, like different islands of which has been separated from the mainland. The next fifth type is perforated state. Perforated state is that state which is completely surround the territory of another state. And after this, there are two subcategories of this shape of the state, like enclaves and exclave, that we will be discussing separately. So first, what is a compact state? It is said that it is the most efficient state. In a compact state, the distance from the center towards its boundary does not vary significantly, and the compactness is very much a beneficial characteristic in the smaller state because it provides the good communication from all sides or from all the regions. An ideal compact state will be that where the center, where the state will be in the form of a circle and the capital should be in the center. And these compact state in the world can be seen in different, like we can take the example of different countries like Poland, Uganda, Cambodia, Burundi, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. These countries are very much compact in their shape, in their different sizes. These are other examples of the compact state. The second type is prorupted state. Its characteristic is accession or disruption, and this proruptions, they are created for two different regions. Either different states, they are like prorupted because of the access of a resource, and we can see this. Take the example like the Congo stretch of the Atlantic Ocean is there because the Congo is trying to take the water from the Atlantic Ocean. And Cabinda is also separated from the rest of Angola. The second proruptions can also be separate two different states, like we can see the example of Afghanistan that separates the Russia from Pakistan during the British rule. Also, the other states which are prorupted are Myanmar and Thailand, that are very good example of prorupted states. These are also the other example of prorupted states. The third state is elongated. The third shape is elongated state. They are having the potential isolation. Here, the state, as we have already seen, under the head of different types of state, that's in this, the length of the state is roughly 6 times than its width. As Chile is the best example, which is having around 2,500 miles long, but it is only 90 miles wide, which is the excellent example of elongated state. Italy is other example, which is 700 kilometers long and 120 miles, 700 miles long and 120 miles wide. Gambia is also one of the example, and these elongated state, they may suffer from poor internal communication, and some regions may be isolated from the capital, which is usually near the center. These are the other example of elongated state, Italy and this Gambia. The fourth type is fragmented state. They are the most problematic state, and these fragmented states are called a state with several discontinuous pieces of territory, or technically we can call that any state that has offshore island is considered fragment state. And these fragmented states are of two kinds. One is the areas that is separated by water, and the areas that is separated by an intervening state. And the classic example or the extreme example is Indonesia, where there are more than 13,000 islands that has been spread over around 300 miles in the Indian Ocean, and the population of Indonesia is isolated in two of its islands, like Java and Sumatra, which is around 80% in these two islands. So the fragmentation hinders the communication and it makes the integration of the pupil very complex, very impossible. But the Indonesian government is trying to make the integration possible by migrating the population from the mainland toward the very much isolated islands. These are the other example of the fragmented state. Like we can see different states like United States, 49 of the United States of America's different states, they has been separated, or the Alaska has been separated from the mainland United States. If the link between these two, if Canada will not be a favorable nation or the friendly nation, then the communication will be very much in that problem. So Cabinda is also one of the example which has been separated from the Angola. And for most of the 20th century, the Panama was also an example of a fragmented state that has been divided into two parts by the United States in 1914 by formation of a canal, Panama Canal. In India also we can see the fragmented state like in terms of the Teen Baiga corridor that has been fragmented into two sections of the country of Bangladesh, and when it was leased to Bangladesh, a section of India was also fragmented into different parts. And the last one is perforated states, that is South Africa. And the perforated state is that a state that completely surrounds another one that is called a perforated state. Here South Africa is the best or the prominent example of a perforated state that surrounds the Lesotho, or the Lesotho is completely surrounded by South Africa. And this Lesotho depends upon South Africa for its import and export of different items. With this, there is also landlocked state, as South Africa is a perforated state, but Lesotho itself is a landlocked state. And landlocked states are those states that lack direct outlet to the sea because it is completely surrounded by a country or several other countries. We can see that in itself Africa, out of 54 countries, 14 countries, they are landlocked. And this is landlockism is because it is the remnant of the European colonialism. And the access to seaport is a critical because it facilitates international trades, because the bulky goods, the heavier goods, they are usually transported by the ships. So the landlocked states are at the mercy of the other states for use of their seaports. And this is the location, these are the location of the landlocked state in the world. There are around 44 landlocked states all over the world. So can we identify what are different types of state these are? As we have already discussed, different shape of the state, different type of the state. So by this we can identify. And in the last we can say what is the importance of shape. So the shape of a state is related to the understanding of the world today, because different states rely on their shape and the surrounding state for their survival. If the state did not have shape, they would need to depend on another state, and there would most likely be fighting over boundaries if they did not have their shape, because the boundaries, they make their shape. Thank you very much. Welcome, dear students. As in the earlier earlier part, we were discussing about the elements of a state, where we discussed different 5 elements and different shape of the state. And in this second part, we will be discussing about the enclaves, the exclaves, the buffer zone, and the shutter belts by taking different examples from the word. So first of all, we should understand what are the enclaves. Enclave, if all or a portion of a one state that is effectively surrounded by another state is called an enclave. So this is enclave is an area that is surrounded by a country but not ruled by it. It can be a self-governing state or a exclave of a different other country. So it can be a problematic for the surrounding country. As we can see, we can take the example of Lesotho, which is the best example of a enclaves, which is an independent country that is exclave in the South Africa, and it is the enclaves are the other part of another state. They are called the exclaves. For example, the enclaves within the Kyrgyzstan are the exclaves of the Tajikistan by this. And the exclave are those territories or those non-island portions of a territory that is part of a larger state, but it is not contiguous or has been physically separated. This we can see the example of different regions of the world, like Leningrad, that is the exclave of Russia. The Cabinda that has been separated from the Angola is also the example of exclave, and the Okuzi, which is the region or the exclave of Timor-Leste. If these territories are surrounded by another state, then it is an enclave within that state. So the exclave may be difficult to maintain or to protect them from being taken over by the country which under which boundaries these are being surrounded. And these are the example of different exclaves. And we should know what is the difference between enclave and exclave. And there's a basic difference that these enclave and exclave, they are, first of all, they are the discontiguous, both are discontiguous territories of a state which are located within the territory of the other states. The enclave is a political, cultural, or a social entity or a part thereof that is completely surrounded by another state, but the exclave is a portion of a country or the territory that is not connected to the mainland part. If we see this seen from the state within which that the outlier is located, it is called an enclave. And if we see this from the state to which this outlier, this part belongs, it is called exclave of that particular region. This we can take the example from the, like a typical example is of a exclave is or enclave, and both the exclave is like Lilibia, which is a town, a Spanish town located in France or eastern part of Pyrenees mountain region of France. It is an exclave of Spain, but at the same time it is the enclave of the French because it is located in the French territory. After that, we should know what is the buffer state. A state that separates different ideological or different political rivalries or differences between different countries, different superpowers. For example, we can take the example of Mongolia. This is the buffer state between the two superpowers, between the Russia and China, because Russia and China system system of the government in those two countries and the ideologies of those two countries is different. So Mongolia works as or act as a buffer state, and this buffer state reduces the direct confrontation between these two countries. So the buffer state is generally a relatively or is relatively smaller than the two superpowers, and the existence of the buffer state may help to prevent different kind of conflict which is prevalent between the two superpowers. So it acts as a sandwich between two different regions, two different parts. And what is the buffer zone? This, if the various state, two state or more than two state, they are located between two sets of or between a set of countries that collectively work as a buffer state. Here we can see the example of buffer zone like Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. They are very much buffer zone which act the buffer zone between the east side as Russian region and the west side as the European region. And what are the different states that works in the modern times? In fact, to prevent wars and conflict, various modern states or modern state across the world has been given the status of a buffer state. We can take the example like Nepal and Bhutan. They are having their own system of government, and they are having their armed forces, and these two countries are regarded as a buffer zone, buffer state between India from the southern side and China from the northern side. Since the tension between India and China is prevalent from starting from war in 1962 between Indochina that has been fought in 1962, and the importance of Nepal and Bhutan as a potential buffer state becomes quite very clear. In fact, the Poland and the other East European countries, they are also being regarded as a buffer states between the eastern side as Russia and the West European nations. There has also been very much like important diplomatic talks that labels Ukraine, that are trying to label Ukraine and Poland as a buffer state, but these two countries they have not accepted they are unhappy and have rejected the proposal to label these countries as a buffer states. And what is the significance of buffer state? There are two important basic aspects or the significance or the importance of these buffer states. First, we can see that there is a strategic importance of buffer states, as in present time with the this world is very much geopolitical and very much complex. So the buffer state, they serve an important role by keeping various war factors a safer distance from each of the state. At different rival powers, they cannot trust each other, so these provide the breathing space, or the buffer state, they provide the breathing space to different superpowers. As the buffer state, they also provide the strategic depth to think, to take some time for the two different countries and allow them to measure their opponents' future moves without directly putting their own land on a stake. And the other important significance or the other major point is international trade dynamics that is provided by the buffer state. As the buffer state, they also are very highly significant role in influencing the international trade dynamics, because the buffer state they act like a handshake between two superpowers, and they also are the places of exchange of goods between two different countries, rival countries, and they keep those two countries as, and this buffer zone states work as a like middlemen. The exchange of trade by a buffer zone or buffer state allows the growth of that particular country's economy, as well as the two countries which are located either side of that buffer zone. And after seeing this, we should also know what is the shatter belt. Shatter belt as a state or a group of state or a region that exists between a stronger colliding or external cultural political forces and having an sphere of competition between these countries. Although the shatter belt serve as a buffer zone because it is under persistent pressure or persistent stress that lead to different kind of creation or fragmentation or the demise of different boundaries of that particular states, and it brought about by aggressive rivals. The classic examples of the shatter belt is the Balkan states. As the state in the shatter belts, they are often invaded, they experience the boundary changes and have the poor economic development, which can be seen from these Balkan states. Here the different state they has been fragmented, the boundaries has been changed, and they are very much like unstable parts of the Europe. So they work as a shatter belt zone. We should also know what is the evolution from which part, from where this shatter belt concept came. So the term shatter belt, this did not appear till the Second World War, and this word's origin is starting from the early 20th century's geopolitical thought, and the earliest research related to the shatter belt shows that this was studied under different, if there was a rivalry between two countries, so this concept of the competition came between two countries and the concept of shatter belt evaluate. As Mahan has taken the example and studied the shatter belt or the region of the Middle Eastern and the Asian state that lie between the 30 to 40 degree parallels, and said that there is a weakness in these states along because these states is having very much resources, though the existence of this belt attract the competition from two extra-regional powers, and those extra-regional powers are notably the Russia and the Britain, for their territorial and economic expansion in that shatter belt zone. As Mackinder has described and said that there is a need to build a middle tier of strong independent countries between Germany and Russia to this Balkan states. The state that he said that this tier were very diverse because these central, like eastern side of the Europe and western side of Russian countries, the Balkan countries or the Eastern European countries, they are very much strong independent states which are between Germany and Russia. These states are very much diverse ethnically as well as politically, and they are very much underdeveloped economically and are trapped in the middle of the fundamental rivalries between the Germany in the west and Russia in the east to control this Eastern Europe. And what is the evolution or the historical development of this shatter belt zone? As Arnstead has called this shatter belt as East Central Europe, the belt of political change in the Europe because of the great instability in that region has plagued this area, and these are characterized by great diversity in terms of different race, language, religion, and nationality, and their neighbors, because the neighboring countries of this region is not having so much of diversity as these countries is having. The East Central Europe region, as Fairgrieve also have described, that this is a crush zone. The Central European region or the East Central Europe region is a crush zone, or the weak European, Middle Eastern and Asian state also has been described as crush zone that had emerged as a buffer zone between the Central Eurasian heartland, Russia, and the world's major sea powers. There are various factors that make it a shutter belt, like the geographical barriers, different repeated intrusion by different rival forces or the neighboring major forces, and there is a suspicion and jealous between different countries that has created different kind of economic and political difficulties in this shutter belt region, because there is the existence of a valuable minerals in this region. So different countries, they try to attract and gain the attention from different foreign countries to gain that particular resources. And what is the definition of this shutter belt? As Hartshorne has wrote that the state in shutter zone or the shutter belt were characterized by the marked political immaturity, because these states are very much politically immature and instability is very prevalent in those regions. As Wittelsey also has noted that the Middle European countries and was very much important because of three important factors, as these states work as a buffer against invasion from the eastern side from the Russia, and it works as a crossroad for the trade between the Western, the Eastern Europe, the Near East, the Baltic state, and the Eastern Mediterranean countries. And because of its economic value, because these Middle European countries, they were very much having very much economic value, and as the agricultural producer and providing the base for the market for manufactured goods. So the Hartshorne said that these shutter belts are all these new states that were crushed with the ills of youth as well as handicapped by lack of strength, because these regions is having very much political instability. So it offers a tempting opportunity to any large state to gain the access in those particular territory to enlarge their military base. What is the recent development of a shutter belt in the world? As Hoffman has described that the Eastern European shutter belt in the context of the Cold War, and he said that this region is very much, Eastern European region is very much characterized by the different kind of transition, and there is a large diversity in terms of the physiography, different nationalities, different languages, and different kind of religions, and population density is also very much diverse in these East European countries. The agricultural and industrial dependence or the level of agriculture and industry are also very much diverse. As the contemporary scholar S.B. Cohen has also developed these ideas of shutter belt and adopted a more global perspective and have given a regional model of the world based upon the shutter belt. He also classified the three different regions of the world that are considered as a shutter belt, like the Middle East region, the Sub-Saharan African region, and the Southeast Asia. These are considered as shutter belt, and he has defined the shutter belt as, and with this quote, that a large strategically located region that is occupied by a number of conflicting states and is caught between the conflicting interests of the great power is called a shutter belt. In fact, the location of the shutter belt is such that it forms the zone of contact between two different superpowers. So Cohen called it as a geostrategic realm. In short, the shutter belt are those regions whose internal, geographical, cultural, religious, and political fragmentation is compounded by pressure from external major powers and attracted by the region's strategic location and economic resources. And what is the recent development about the shutter belt? As Kelly has argued that the shutter belt state, they tend to exhibit the notable fragmentation. There was a fragmentation in the shutter belt zone, but the other non-shutter belt state, they also showed the similar fragmentation. And he said that a shutter belt is the geographic region over whose control the great powers, they seriously compete to gain the access and try to establish different kind of alliance foothold with the powers or with the state that are in that region. So a shutter belt originates when the rival great powers footholds are present in that particular area. So after seeing all this definition, all this historical development, we should know what are different components of a shutter belt. So after analyzing all the literature, there are 4 different components of a state that form the basis of definition of a shutter belt. First component of this shutter belt is that the shutter belt region, they lie outside the major powers sphere of influence, but they are accessible to those states that are in effect and creating overlapping spheres. So the shutter belt are supposed to be the arenas for competition. There's a large competition between different states for the access of the different resources, and it is not the areas which is dominated by a particular superpower or a particular country. So this is a zone or the arenas for the competition. The second related point about the shutter belt is that these are those regions which are having the equal footing for different countries. So the more than one major power must have an ally in that particular region, and the military presence or a strong patron-client relationship in that area. So the multiple factors or multiple major powers presence that led to different kind of competitiveness in that particular region. And the third important component of a shutter belt is that these states are very much politically immature, because, and these immaturity is because of these states has been recently become independent, so they are not established their strong government and the structure of the penetration in those countries. And finally, the shutter belts consist of the states that are fragmented both internally and between one another in terms of political ideology, ethnic makeup, or different kind of religion. And this shutter belt, we can see the example by taking an example as Cohen has taken this region, South Asian region, as an important shutter belt region. So this region, Southeast Asian region, is very much diverse, because here different kind of things are prevalent, and there are major issues in those South Asian region, because this region, South Asian region, is very much fragmented realms having various islands and different countries and different peninsulas, and the physiography of these countries is very much dominated by very much dissected relief, high relief. There is a crustal instability in this region, and prevalence of a tropical climate is in those countries. And these characteristics of this region are very much like these are very much politically unstable, and conflict has been prevalent in this region, and the population is clustered in different zones, so the poor intra-regional communication is found there. There is a cultural fragmentation in terms of complex ethnicity. Language is different in these countries. There are various languages in these countries, and the different type of religion they are followed in this zone, in this region. And these countries, major concentration, population concentration is in the river valley or in the river delta region. If we see in terms of shutter belt, it is caught, this Southeast Asian region has been caught between two different colliding external forces, because having like persistent stress, and they are often fragmented by aggressive rivals. There is a historical and contemporary significance of the Southeast Asian region, and this region has been a theater of conflict during the Cold War, starting from 1945 to 1991, because here different wars has been taken place, like Vietnam War and the Cambodian genocide. There's a variety of political and economic and cultural landscape in this region, as least developed countries are also located in Southeast Asian region, like Laos, Cambodia and Burma. These are least advanced economies of this region. There are emerging nations in the Southeast Asia, like Malaysia, the Indonesia, the Philippines and Thailand, and obviously Singapore is the like advanced stage or the leader in this zone. So in the last, we can see what is the significance of the shutter belt. As a result of pressure that brought to bear on shutter belt countries, it is not uncommon to find economic development problems and political instability within their border. So there may be different boundary disputes within a shutter belt region as a pressure from dominance that is exerted by the larger competing states. As we can see that the Poland was a shutter belt country during the World War, both the World War First and World War Second, by its virtue, because it's located in that particular region. So it works the like shutter belt between the Germany and Russia, and the Poland is there has been a frequent boundary changes over the years as a result of pressure from eastern side and the western side. And the Southeast Asia is also have been characterized as a shutter belt. The region is very much culturally diverse, and it is very much physically dissected, and these conditions make it prone to take the European powers during the era of colonialism during the 19th and the 20th century. So different countries, they came in that particular region to gain the access. So this is the importance of the shutter belt region. Thank you very much.
Dear friends, on that note, we would like to thank Dr. Ahmed for coming to our show and delivering this wonderful lecture. Friends, thanks for watching our show. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you.